News when you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Ed Kaleg. The Thursday numbers on Wall Street, the Dow was dragged down by shares of United Health Group, which closed down 22% after the company cut its annual forecast and reported its first earnings miss in more than a decade, in a foreboding sign that sent shares across the insurance industry tumbling. The company said it was blindsided by rising medical costs as the first quarter closed, upending a forecast it had affirmed just 3 months ago. The Dow finished down by 1.3%. NASDAQ lost just over 0.1%. The S&P gained just over 0.1%. The bond market, which closed at 2 p.m. Wall Street time, leading up to the Good Friday markets holiday, the 10-year Treasury yield at 4.33%, the 2-year Treasury yield at 3.8%, and markets will be closed for Good Friday. Netflix reported first quarter profit that exceeded Wall Street forecasts, boosted by a recent price increase and a strong slate of programming across the globe, like the hit UK series Adolescence. The owner of the world's most popular online TV network said in a statement Thursday that earnings rose 25% to $6.61 a share, easily beating analysts' estimates of $5.68. Sales grew 13% to $10.5 billion, in line with projections. This is the first time Netflix has reported financial results without disclosing how many customers it added or lost, the main yardstick investors previously used to gauge the company's performance. Management is forcing investors to judge its success or failure based on more traditional financial metrics. President Trump says he could force out Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell, rebuking the notion that a U.S. central bank is independent, and vented frustration that monetary policymakers had not recently cut interest rates.
I don't think he's doing the job. He's too late, always too late, a little slow, and I'm not happy with him. I let him know it, and if I want him out, he'll be out of there real fast, believe me.
The U.S. president in a post said that Powell's termination cannot come fast enough. A Fed spokesperson had declined to comment on Trump's earlier remark. The U.S. Supreme Court says it will hear arguments on President Trump's bid to start enforcing an executive order which would restrict automatic birthright citizenship and upend a long-standing constitutional right. Bloomberg's Sara Folden says constitutional scholars have long believed that birthright citizenship is sacrosanct.
So the fact that they are willing to take this up and to start to parse it and consider the restrictions that are being proposed by the Trump administration means that this right could potentially be in play going forward.
Sara Folden speaking with Bloomberg Businessweek Daily. The court said Thursday it will keep Trump's restrictions on hold in advance of the May 15th argument. The case won't directly concern the validity of the new restrictions and will instead center on the reach of 3 rulings that blocked implementation of the executive order nationwide. The European Union is working on a proposal to introduce restrictions on some exports to the U.S. as a possible retaliatory tactic in the expensive trade war President Trump initiated last month. The restrictions would be used as a deterrent and only if negotiations with the U.S., which has put new tariffs on around $432 billion of EU goods, failed to produce a satisfactory outcome. This according to people familiar with the plan. Such retaliation by the EU would mark an escalation in an expanding trade dispute, as it could invite a forceful response from Washington. Trump threatened to put a 50% tariff on Canadian metals last month after Ontario announced plans to place a surcharge on electricity sent to the U.S. Alphabet shares closed down nearly 1.5% after Google was found by a federal judge to have illegally monopolized some online advertising technology markets in a blow to a key part of the company's business. U.S. District Judge Leonie Brinkema found Thursday that the Alphabet unit violated antitrust law in the markets for advertising exchanges and tools used by websites to sell ad space, known as ad servers. But she said the company didn't meet the definition of a monopoly for third market of tools used by advertisers to buy display ads. Bloomberg Intelligence senior litigation analyst Jennifer Rye looks ahead to next steps for Google.
And in both cases, the Department of Justice is going to ask a judge to force it to sell assets. As long as that's out there, those companies are at risk. Now, would I bet that that's what's going to happen? No.
On Monday, a remedy hearing is scheduled in the DOJ versus Google search matter. Multiple victims were reported in a shooting at Florida State University, and a suspect was taken into police custody. Students and frightened parents hid in a bowling alley and crammed into a freight elevator inside the student union after hearing gunshots outside the building. The extent of the victims' injuries was not immediately known, and there were no additional details about the person in custody. At least 6 people were being treated, including one person who was in critical condition. This FSU student describes describes the scene.
As I was walking back, I see these group of girls crying, really upset, walking back from the student union, told me they heard gunshots, and they just ran and came back to their apartment where I was walking to.
That's news when you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Ed Kaleg, and this is Bloomberg.